In the glittering heart of the city, Élysée Atelier is a beacon of wealth and power, a sanctuary for the elite, where exclusivity is both the product and the prize. For Lila Harrington, a former humanitarian aid worker with a modest demeanor and unshakable resolve, it's just another store she stumbles into while searching for the perfect gift for her sister. But behind the boutique's opulent façade lies a shadowy culture of quiet prejudice. Humiliated by the staff and dismissed as an outsider, Lila finds herself confronted by old wounds and memories of her sister's struggles. Determined to turn indignity into action, she embarks on a journey to expose the darker side of luxury. With the help of her journalist friend, Elliot, Lila shines a spotlight on Élysée Atelier, igniting a public reckoning that ripples far beyond its glass doors. But as the truth unravels, Lila discovers a startling connection between the boutique's founder and her own mission, forcing her to ask, can ambition and compassion coexist? And is it possible to confront a legacy of exclusion without becoming part of it? Shadows of Elegance is a gripping tale of resilience and transformation, where standing up for dignity and justice may reveal the humanity hidden in the most unexpected places. Perfect for readers who love emotional stories with heart, this novel dares to ask, how far would you go to make the world see what's right? The streets of the luxury district hummed with life. Sleek cars gliding past towering storefronts and well-dressed shoppers clutching glossy bags. Lila Harrington stood on the corner, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her worn cardigan. She glanced down at her phone, scrolling through pictures of elegant handbags and jewelry. This one feels right, she murmured to herself, pausing at a photo of an emerald green bag. It was striking yet timeless, perfect for Maya. Her gaze shifted to the boutique across the street, Élysée Atelier, its name embossed in gold above the glass doors. The bag in her photo gleamed in the window display, as if daring her to step inside. She hesitated, tugging at her sleeve. "What's the worst that could happen?" she whispered, summoning her resolve. Straightening her posture, Lila crossed the street and pushed open the door, the soft chimes signaling her arrival. The air inside Élysée Atelier was heavy with the scent of expensive candles. Marble floors reflected the warm glow of crystal chandeliers, while racks of exquisite garments lined the walls. Lila paused, taking in the space, her footsteps light against the polished stone. Behind a sleek glass counter, Victor Crane exchanged a glance with his colleague, Eliza Moreau. "Well, this is unusual," he murmured under his breath, his blue eyes narrowing slightly. Eliza's clipboard clutched tightly in her hands. She raised an eyebrow. "Not our typical clientele," she replied softly, her words clipped. Lila, oblivious to their whispers, walked toward the handbag display, her eyes drawn to the emerald piece. As she approached, Victor stepped forward, his smile sharp and practiced. "Good morning," he greeted her, his tone polite yet laced with condescension. "May I assist you?" "I was admiring this bag," Lila said, her voice steady. "Could I take a closer look?" Victor hesitated, his eyes flickering to her worn sneakers. "Of course," he said after a moment, reaching into the display case. "This is one of our most exclusive pieces." Eliza hovered nearby, her gaze cold and appraising. Lila felt the weight of their scrutiny, but refused to let it deter her. Victor placed the bag carefully on the counter, his movements deliberate. "This design is handcrafted in Italy," he began, his voice adopting a rehearsed enthusiasm. "Only a handful exist worldwide." "It's beautiful," Lila said, running her fingers over the smooth leather. "How much is it?" $75,000, Victor replied, his words deliberate, as though testing her reaction. Lila blinked, maintaining her composure. I see. Can you tell me more about the craftsmanship? Victor faltered, surprised by her calm demeanor. Well, the leather is sourced from... Eliza interrupted, stepping closer. Items like this are typically reserved for our long-standing clients, she said, her smile sweet but insincere. Were you referred to us by someone? No, Lila said, her voice steady. I walked in. Eliza's lips tightened. I see. Well, our inventory moves quickly, so we do recommend immediate purchases. Lila felt a flicker of heat rise in her chest. She looked between Victor and Eliza, their polite facades failing to mask their doubt. I'd like to think about it, she said evenly, stepping back from the counter. As Lila moved toward the exit, Victor called after her. One moment, ma'am, he said, his tone overly sweet. Before we proceed further, we'll need to run a credit check. It's standard policy for high-value items. Lila froze, her heart sinking. She turned slowly, her gaze locking onto Victor's. A credit check? She repeated, her voice calm but laced with steel. Why is that necessary before I've decided to purchase? Victor hesitated, clearly unprepared for her challenge. It's just to ensure smooth transactions, he said weakly. Lila's jaw tightened. Or is it because I don't fit your idea of a worthy customer? A silence settled over the boutique, the faint murmur of other customers fading into the background. Eliza stepped forward, her cheeks flushing. Ma'am, we simply have policies. Policies? Lila interrupted, her voice rising slightly. Policies that seem to apply selectively. Victor shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Eliza for support. Lila exhaled, her frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. Thank you for your time, she said curtly, turning toward the door. The soft chime echoed as she stepped into the cool air of the street, the sting of humiliation following her. That evening, Lila sat curled on the couch in her apartment, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The soft glow of the fireplace flickered across the room, casting long shadows on the walls. She stared at the emerald handbag on her phone screen, the events of the day replaying in her mind. The whispers, the judgment, the thinly veiled dismissal. It all felt achingly familiar. Her thoughts drifted to Maya, and a pang of guilt tightened her chest. Years ago, Maya had experienced something similar. A brush with prejudice that left her hesitant to step into luxury spaces again. Lila had stayed silent then, unsure of how to defend her sister. But not this time. Reaching for her phone, Lila scrolled to Elliot's number. He picked up after a few rings, his warm voice a welcome comfort. Lila? What's going on? I need your help, she said, her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling beneath the surface. Something happened today, and I can't let it slide. Elliot was quiet for a moment. Tell me everything, he said, his tone serious. As Lila recounted the incident, her resolve solidified. This wasn't just about her or the handbag. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel small, invisible, or unworthy. This was just the beginning. The cafe smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries, a stark contrast to the sterile opulence of Elysée Atelier. Lila stirred her tea absently, her gaze distant as she recounted the events of the day before to Elliot. She looked at me like I didn't belong, like I wasn't even worth her time, Lila said, frustration creeping into her voice. And then there was the credit check. Can you believe that? Elliot leaned forward, his green eyes narrowing. I can, unfortunately. But Lila, this isn't just about you. It's about the system they're protecting. They rely on these unspoken rules of exclusion. Lila nodded slowly. I know. It's why I can't just let it go. I need people to see what's happening in places like that. Elliot smiled faintly, his journalist instincts kicking in. Then let's make them see. If we play this right, you won't just be standing up for yourself. You'll be giving a voice to everyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. How? Lila asked, her expression both determined and hesitant. We'll craft a story, something that demands attention, Elliot said. But first, we need to set the stage. Elliot spent the afternoon making calls, his voice calm but persuasive as he pitched the story to trusted contacts in media circles. Meanwhile, Lila began scrolling through social media, sharing a brief but powerful post about her experience at Élysée Atelier. The responses came quickly. Comments flooded in, many from people who shared similar stories of discrimination. My mom was ignored in a jewelry store once. She left in tears. One message read, "Thank you for speaking up. So many of us feel invisible in these places," said another. Lila blinked back tears as she read the flood of messages. Elliot, she said, holding up her phone. It's not just me. Look at these stories. Elliot glanced at her screen, nodding. This is exactly why we need to keep going. The more people share their experiences, the harder it'll be for places like Élysée to hide behind their exclusivity. So what's next? Lila asked. Elliot tapped his pen on the table. We dig deeper. Elliot's research led them to a surprising discovery. The boutique's founder, Estelle Crane, wasn't born into wealth. Decades ago, she'd been a struggling seamstress who built Élysée Atelier from nothing. She came from humble beginnings, Elliot said, scrolling through an old article on his laptop. Yet now, her brand thrives on exclusion. It's ironic, don't you think? Lila leaned over his shoulder, studying a photo of Estelle standing proudly in front of her first shop. I wonder if she's even aware of what's happening under her name, she mused. Elliot raised an eyebrow. Maybe. Or maybe she's the one enforcing it. The discovery added another layer to their mission. Lila felt a pang of curiosity about Estelle's story, but she pushed it aside. First, we deal with the staff who made this personal, she said. Agreed, Elliot replied. But this background will be useful when the story gets bigger. By evening, Lila's story had gone viral. Support poured in from all corners, with hashtags like #RespectMatters and #ExclusivityExposed trending. News outlets began picking up on the conversation, asking for interviews. People are listening, Lila said, her voice tinged with both excitement and trepidation. Because you're saying something that needs to be said, Elliot replied. This isn't just about one boutique. It's about a culture of discrimination. As she read through more messages, Lila's phone buzzed with a call from Maya. She answered quickly. Maya, did you see what's happening? I did, Maya said, her voice soft but steady. And I'm so proud of you, Lila. I wish I'd spoken up back then. This is for both of us, Lila said, her voice thick with emotion. For everyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong. The following morning, Lila and Elliot sat in his small but cluttered office, surrounded by notes and news clippings. If we're going to confront them, we need to do it publicly, Elliot said, tapping a notepad. With journalists, cameras, the works. Lila hesitated. Are you sure that's the best way? I don't want it to look like I'm seeking attention. It's not about attention. It's about accountability, Elliot countered. The boutique needs to face the consequences of their actions, and people need to see what's really happening. Lila exhaled slowly, nodding. Okay, let's do it. Elliot grinned. That's the spirit. Now, let's make sure we're prepared. As they planned the logistics, Lila felt a sense of purpose settle over her. This wasn't just her fight. It was a stand for everyone who had ever been judged or dismissed, and she was ready to see it through. Lila stood outside Elysee Atelier, her reflection wavering in the pristine glass doors. Behind her, a small media crew quietly adjusted their cameras, murmuring instructions to one another. The streets bustled with passers-by, some glancing curiously at the unfolding scene. Elliot stepped up beside her. "Nervous?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with encouragement. "A little," Lila admitted, smoothing her cardigan. "But it's not just about me anymore. It's about every person who's been made to feel like they don't belong." Elliot gave her a reassuring nod. "Then let's make sure they hear you." Lila took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The familiar chime echoed, and the staff froze mid-motion. Victor was the first to notice her, his sharp features betraying a flicker of surprise before he quickly masked it with his usual air of superiority. "Miss Harrington," he said smoothly, stepping forward. "Back so soon?" Lila met his gaze, her voice steady. "I'm here to address the way I was treated during my last visit. And this time, I brought witnesses." The cameras clicked on, and the room seemed to shrink under the weight of the moment. Victor's confident veneer faltered as Lila began to speak, her voice cutting through the boutique's carefully maintained hush. "Last time I was here, I was judged before I could even speak. I was dismissed, humiliated, and made to feel like I didn't belong," Lila said, her words clear and deliberate. "And I know I'm not the only one." Eliza appeared from a back office, clipboard in hand, her sharp gaze darting between Lila and the cameras. "Ms. Harrington, if you have concerns, we'd be happy to address them privately," she said, her tone tight. "No," Lila replied firmly. "This isn't just about me. It's about the culture you uphold here. A culture that excludes and diminishes people based on nothing more than appearances." Victor cleared his throat, stepping closer. "We have policies in place to ensure the exclusivity of our brand." "It's not personal." "It felt personal," Lila countered, her voice rising slightly. "And it is personal for every customer who's ever been treated the way I was." The cameras panned to Victor, whose polished demeanor began to crack. "We cater to a specific clientele," he said carefully. "Our policies are designed to protect the experience of our long-standing customers." "And what about new customers?" Lila shot back. "What about people who don't fit your narrow idea of who deserves respect? Are they less worthy of being here?" Victor hesitated, glancing at Eliza for support. She stepped forward, her clipped tone barely masking her irritation. "Ms. Harrington, we reserve the right to enforce our policies as we see fit. And do those policies include making assumptions about people based on their appearance?" Lila asked, her words sharp. The boutique fell silent, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on everyone present. Eliza's composure wavered as the cameras zoomed in, capturing every uncomfortable moment. She clutched her clipboard tightly, her knuckles white. "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding," Eliza said, her voice brittle. "We strive to provide excellent service to all our clients." "Do you?" Lila asked, her tone unwavering. "Because I didn't feel that excellence last time I was here." A murmur rippled through the boutique. Customers who had been quietly observing began to exchange glances, their curiosity shifting to visible unease. Elliot stepped forward, holding a microphone. "Would you care to clarify how your policies align with treating every customer fairly?" he asked, his journalist instincts kicking in. Eliza faltered, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled for a response. Victor looked away, clearly uncomfortable. Lila turned to the cameras, her voice steady and resolute. This isn't just about one boutique or one experience. It's about a culture that thrives on exclusion. It's about the quiet, insidious prejudice that tells people they aren't good enough, that they don't belong. Her words hung in the air, a stark contrast to the boutique's glittering opulence. "I'm not here to tear anyone down," she continued, her tone softening slightly. "I'm here to demand better. For myself, for everyone who's ever felt invisible, and for the businesses that have the power to change." The cameras captured her every word, the staff's discomfort, and the customers' shifting expressions. As Lila finished, a smattering of applause broke out from a few onlookers near the door. Victor and Eliza exchanged a look, their once impeccable professionalism unraveling under the scrutiny. As Lila turned to leave, Elliot whispered, "You just lit a fire they won't be able to put out." Outside, the growing crowd greeted her with cheers and questions. Lila paused, the cool air brushing against her skin, and faced the cameras once more. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Change starts here." The video of Lila's confrontation at Élysée Atelier spread across social media like wildfire. Clips of her calm but pointed words, Victor's fumbling defense, and the staff's unease were accompanied by hashtags like #RespectMatters and #ExclusivityExposed. Within hours, comments flooded in, some filled with praise, others with skepticism. Lila sat in her apartment, scrolling through the messages on her phone. Maya was on the other end of a video call, her face framed by the soft light of her kitchen. "Have you read the comments?" Maya asked. "There's so much support, and some criticism," Lila replied, holding her phone up to the screen. "Look at this one. Why didn't she just leave quietly? Seems like she wanted attention." Maya's expression hardened. "That's nonsense. You didn't just do this for yourself, Lila. You did it for people like me." Lila smiled faintly. "I know. It's just hard not to take it personally. Don't let the negativity drown out the voices that matter," Maya said. "You've started something important. Keep going." The next morning, Élysée Atelier released a public statement on their social media accounts. It read, "At Élysée Atelier, we strive to provide exceptional service to all our clients. We are deeply sorry for the incident that occurred and are committed to implementing inclusivity training for our staff. We value all of our patrons and will work diligently to ensure such incidents never happen again." Lila frowned as she read the statement aloud to Elliot over the phone. "It feels hollow," she said, "like they're just trying to save face." Elliot chuckled dryly. "Of course they are. It's damage control, not accountability. But that doesn't mean we let them off the hook." "So, what do we do next?" Lila asked. "We keep pushing," Elliot said. "This apology is just the first crack in their façade. Let's see if we can widen it." Later that day, an unexpected email landed in Lila's inbox. The subject line read, "A personal invitation." The message was from Estelle Crane herself. "Ms. Harrington, I was deeply troubled by the incident at Élysée Atelier. As the founder, I take full responsibility for the culture my brand has cultivated. I would like to meet with you personally to discuss your concerns. Please let me know if you're willing to have a conversation. Best, Estelle Crane." Lila stared at the screen, her heart pounding. "Elliot," she called, beckoning him over. "You're not going to believe this." Elliot read the email and whistled. "Well, this changes things. She seems genuine," Lila said. "But I don't know. What if it's just another PR move?" "Only one way to find out," Elliot said. "Meet her." Hear her out. Worst case, you call her bluff. That evening, Lila called Maya to share the news. Her sister listened quietly before speaking. I think you should meet her, Maya said. If she's sincere, this could be a chance to create real change. And if she's not? Lila asked. Then you expose that too, Maya replied. You're in the driver's seat now, Lila. Don't be afraid to steer. Lila smiled at her sister's confidence. You always know what to say. That's what sisters are for, Maya said with a grin. The next morning, Lila sat in her apartment, preparing for her meeting with Estelle. She jotted down notes, her thoughts a mix of nervousness and resolve. Elliot, sitting across from her with a cup of coffee, offered his advice. Remember, this isn't just about calling her out. It's about figuring out if she's willing to be part of the solution. Lila nodded. I'm going to be honest, but fair. If she's sincere, I'll work with her. If not, well, the cameras will be watching. Elliot smiled. That's my Lila. Calm, collected, and always one step ahead. As Lila gathered her things, she glanced at her reflection in the mirror. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of clarity. This isn't just my fight, she said aloud. It's for everyone who's ever been made to feel less than. And that, Elliot said, raising his coffee in a mock toast, is why you're going to win. Lila stood at the gates of Estelle Crane's sprawling yet understated estate, the cool morning air carrying the scent of nearby lavender. The house before her was elegant, blending old-world charm with modern refinement. It was a striking contrast to the towering opulence of Élysée Atelier. Elliot had dropped her off, giving her a quick pep talk before driving away. Now, as she pressed the intercom button and waited for the gates to open, Lila's nerves tightened. A few deep breaths steadied her. The door opened to reveal Estelle herself, petite and impeccably dressed in a simple navy sheath dress. Her silvery hair was styled in a neat chignon, and her pale blue eyes studied Lila carefully with a hint of weariness. Miss Harrington, Estelle greeted, extending a hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Thank you for inviting me, Lila replied, her voice steady as they shook hands. Estelle led her into a sunlit sitting room, its walls lined with framed sketches of dresses and handbags. A sewing machine sat by the window, a silent reminder of Estelle's roots. I wanted to explain. Estelle began as they sat, her tone measured. The incident at my boutique. It does not reflect the values I built this brand upon. With respect, Ms. Crane, Lila said, her hazel eyes meeting Estelle's. It's hard to reconcile those words with what I experienced. What happened to me wasn't just an isolated moment. It's systemic. Estelle hesitated, her composure flickering for a moment. Perhaps you're right. But this culture, as you call it, was never my intention. Estelle stood and moved to the window, her silhouette framed by the morning light. I came from nothing, she began, her voice softer now. A seamstress in a small town, stitching dresses by hand and dreaming of something bigger. When I started Élysée Atelier, it was meant to be a haven for artistry, a place where people could find beauty in the details. And now? Lila asked gently. Estelle turned to face her, her expression conflicted. Somewhere along the way, exclusivity became synonymous with prestige. I convinced myself it was necessary to survive in a world that rewards luxury. But at what cost? Lila pressed. I understand ambition, but when ambition comes at the expense of humanity, something has to change. Estelle sighed, lowering herself back into her chair. You're not wrong, Miss Harrington, but changing an empire, it's not as simple as snapping your fingers. No, it's not, Lila agreed. But it starts with a choice. They spoke for hours, dissecting the boutique's policies and the attitudes that had taken root among its staff. Lila outlined her vision: mandatory inclusivity training, a code of conduct for employees, and a commitment to diversifying the brand's image. You could use your story to inspire others, Lila suggested. You've shown resilience in building this empire. Imagine using that resilience to reshape it. Estelle folded her hands in her lap, her gaze thoughtful. And if it fails? It won't, Lila said with quiet confidence. But even if it does, wouldn't you rather fail doing what's right than succeed by staying silent? Estelle's lips curved into a faint smile. You remind me of myself. Idealistic, stubborn, unyielding. I'll take that as a compliment, Lila replied, matching her smile. By the time the sun dipped lower in the sky, Estelle had softened considerably. She leaned back in her chair, a mix of exhaustion and relief on her face. I'll do it, she said finally. I'll make the changes you've proposed. But I'll need your help. Lila blinked in surprise. My help? This isn't just about policies, Estelle explained. It's about perception. People like you, strong, articulate, compassionate, can help rebuild trust. Lila considered her words. She'd never intended to become a figurehead for change, but the sincerity in Estelle's voice was undeniable. I'll help, Lila said, but only if the changes are real and lasting. Estelle nodded. They will be. As Lila left Estelle's home, she felt a cautious optimism settling over her. The conversation hadn't erased the pain of her experience, but it had planted the seeds of something greater. Elliot was waiting for her in his car at the end of the driveway. He rolled down the window as she approached. How'd it go? He asked. She's willing to change, Lila replied, sliding into the passenger seat. And she wants my help. Elliot raised an eyebrow. You didn't just make her listen, you made her a partner. Impressive. Lila smiled faintly. This isn't just about me anymore, Elliot. It's about everyone who's been silenced, judged, or dismissed. As they drove away, Lila stared out the window, the city lights beginning to flicker against the darkening sky. This wasn't the end of her fight. It was only the beginning. The bright lights of the press conference glared down on Lila and Estelle, seated at a long table flanked by microphones. Cameras clicked incessantly, and the murmurs of reporters filled the air. The backdrop behind them bore the Élysée Atelier logo alongside the words, "A new era of elegance." Estelle began, her voice calm yet purposeful. Today, Élysée Atelier takes a step forward. We acknowledge the mistakes of our past and the harm caused by a culture of exclusivity that no longer aligns with our values. We are committed to rebuilding trust, starting with tangible actions. Lila glanced at her, nodding in silent encouragement before leaning into her microphone. This isn't just about one store or one experience. It's about the systemic biases we've all faced or witnessed, and the work we need to do to dismantle them. I stand here today because I believe change is possible, not through words alone, but through accountability and action. A reporter raised a hand. Ms. Harrington, what do you say to those who believe this is just a PR move? Lila smiled faintly, her voice unwavering. I would say that change has to start somewhere. Actions will speak louder than words, and it's up to all of us to ensure those actions are meaningful. The press conference sparked a wave of conversations across social media and news platforms. Within days, Lila was invited to participate in a town hall forum, joining activists, business leaders, and everyday citizens who had shared their own experiences with exclusion. The forum took place in a spacious hall with rows of chairs and a stage set with a single microphone. A large screen behind the stage displayed comments and stories submitted in real time by virtual attendees. As Lila stepped onto the stage, she scanned the faces in the audience, young and old, diverse and eager. She began with a deep breath. "I didn't set out to become a spokesperson," she said, her voice steady. "But when you experience injustice, you have a choice: to stay silent or to speak up. I chose to speak, not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been judged unfairly." One by one, attendees shared their stories. A young woman recounted being ignored in a luxury boutique. An older man spoke of racial profiling at a high-end car dealership. Their voices blended into a powerful symphony of shared experiences. Elliot, sitting in the audience, leaned over to Maya. "This is bigger than I expected," he whispered. Maya nodded, her eyes glistening. "She's creating something powerful." Back at Élysée Atelier, the fallout from the confrontation continued. Victor sat in his sleek office, staring at a resignation letter on his desk. The walls that had once symbolized his control now felt suffocating. Eliza entered, her clipboard absent for the first time. "So, you're really leaving?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. Victor sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "It's better this way. I became too focused on guarding the brand's image, and I lost sight of what mattered." Eliza crossed her arms, her usual sharpness replaced by vulnerability. "I've been asked to lead diversity training for the staff," she said. "Part of me feels like it's just for show." "Then make it real," Victor replied. "We've been given a chance to do better. Let's not waste it." Eliza nodded, a flicker of resolve lighting her features. "You're right. It's time for all of us to change." At home, Lila sat with Maya, sipping tea in the warm glow of the fireplace. The air between them was light, free of the tension that had once lingered after difficult conversations. "I still can't believe how far this has come," Maya said, her voice tinged with awe. "You've done something incredible, Lila." "It wasn't just me," Lila said, smiling at her sister. "It was your courage too. If you hadn't encouraged me to meet Estelle, I might not have taken that step." Maya reached over, squeezing Lila's hand. "You've given a voice to so many people, including me." Lila's gaze softened. "And you've reminded me of why this fight matters. It's not just about policies or public statements. It's about people." Months later, Élysée Atelier reopened its flagship store with a new vision. The grand reopening event featured not only the boutique's signature luxury items, but also pieces inspired by Estelle's humble beginnings as a seamstress. A section of the store was dedicated to up-and-coming designers from diverse backgrounds, highlighting their stories and artistry. Lila walked through the store, marveling at the transformation. Estelle stood near the entrance, greeting customers with a genuine smile. "It's beautiful," Lila said as she approached. "It's a start," Estelle replied. "And it wouldn't have happened without you." Nearby, Elliot snapped photos for an article he was writing about the reopening. Maya browsed a rack of scarves, her confidence radiant as she admired a vibrant design. As Lila looked around, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just about a store, it was about what it represented: progress, hope, the power of speaking up. Estelle placed a hand on Lila's shoulder. "You gave me the courage to change. For that, I'll always be grateful. And you reminded me that even those we challenge can become allies," Lila said. The two women stood together, watching as the boutique filled with a diverse array of customers, each one treated with the dignity and respect they deserved.